I was still in my flour-dusted hoodie when the email hit my inbox. The kind of message people print out just to prove it is real. I did the foolish thing anyway and told my family first. My sister replied in the group chat with one sentence that made my stomach go cold, claiming nobody cared about my stupid award. An hour later, she posted a photo of my parents drinking wine while a television above them began broadcasting my name like a headline. My name is Autumn Long. I am 34 years old, and for the last 18 months, my entire existence has been measured in Scoville heat units and shipping manifests. The commissary kitchen in Greenville, South Carolina, was quiet, save for the hum of the industrial refrigerator and the rhythmic dripping of a faucet in the prep sink that the landlord refused to fix. It was 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night. The air tasted of vinegar and smoked paprika, a scent that had seeped so deeply into my pores that I doubted it would ever wash out. This was the headquarters of Whitaker and Wild. It sounded grand on the label, but in reality, it was just me, standing over a 40-gallon steam kettle, scraping the last of the Carolina Gold reduction into a plastic tub. My back ached in that dull, persistent way that becomes background noise after a decade in food service. I wiped my hands on my apron, leaving streaks of turmeric yellow stain on the white cotton. I was tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the bone-deep exhaustion of building something from nothing while everyone you love watches from the sidelines, waiting for it to collapse. I pulled my phone from the pocket of my flour-dusted hoodie to check the inventory spreadsheet. That is when I saw the notification. It was an email. The subject line was simple, devoid of the usual urgency markers or promotional flair. It read, "Official notification, the Marlowe Guild Annual Honors." I froze. My thumb hovered over the screen. In the culinary world, the Marlowe Guild was not just an organization, it was the gatekeeper. They did not send spam. They did not send newsletters you did not sign up for. I tapped the screen, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The text was formal. It stated that the selection committee had completed their review of the emerging artisan category. It said that Whitaker and Wild had been selected as the winner of the Breakthrough Maker Award. It invited me to Chicago for a televised ceremony on the 15th of next month. I read it 3 times. Then I read the sender address to make sure it was not a cruel prank. It was real. I had won. For a moment, I just stood there in the empty kitchen, surrounded by stainless steel and the smell of peppers. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run out into the parking lot and yell at the empty warehouse district. I had done it. After years of being told my sauces were just a cute hobby, after years of grinding away in silence, the biggest institution in the country had looked at my work and called it a breakthrough. The joy hit me first, bright and overwhelming. But then, as it always did, the shadow followed. I needed to tell someone. The instinct was automatic, ingrained in me since childhood. When something big happens, you tell the family, you present your offering to the tribe and hope. Just this once. It is enough to earn a seat at the table. I opened the group chat labeled Long Family Connect. My thumbs hesitated over the keyboard. I knew the rhythm of this chat. It was mostly my mother sharing weather warnings, my father posting blurry photos of his lawn, and my older sister, Sloane, posting links to her wish lists or photos of her outfits. I was the observer, the one who reacted with heart emojis and supportive comments. Rarely interrupting the flow of the Sloane show, I typed carefully. I deleted it. I typed it again. I wanted to sound casual, like I was not desperate for their approval, but I also wanted them to understand the magnitude of this. "Hey everyone," I typed, "I have some crazy news. I just got an email from the Marlowe Guild. I won their Breakthrough Maker Award for the sauce line. There is a big ceremony in Chicago next month, and it is going to be on national television. I would love for you guys to come, or at least watch it when it airs. It is a really big deal for me." I hit send. I watched the screen. The timestamp read 10:12 at night. Nothing happened for a long minute. Then, 3 little bubbles appeared. Sloane was typing. I held my breath. I imagined her reading it. I imagined her turning to my mother and saying, "Wow, Autumn actually did something." I imagined, For a fleeting second, a congratulations, the message popped up. We don't have time for your stupid award. Dad booked dinner. The air left my lungs. It was not just a rejection. It was a dismissal so casual it felt violent. Stupid award. She had typed it so fast. There was no pause to consider. No Google search to see what the Marlowe Guild was. Just an immediate, reflex action to belittle. Then my mother, Marilyn, chimed in. Her message arrived 30 seconds later. Reservations were already made. Honey, you know how hard it is to get a table for 4 on a Friday. A table for 4. There were 4 of us. They had made a reservation for 4, assuming I would be there to fill the seat. But the moment I had something of my own, the plans became immutable constraints. Then came the final blow. My father, Graham, he did not type words. He simply sent a single reaction to Sloane's message. A thumbs-up emoji. That was it, the final verdict. The patriarch had spoken, not with a counter-argument or a reason, but with a lazy digital gesture of agreement. Sloane was right. The award was stupid. Dinner was more important. I stared at the screen until the backlight dimmed and turned off, leaving me standing in the dark. I should have been angry. I should have thrown my phone into the deep sink, but I did not feel rage. I felt a strange, cold clicking sensation in my chest. It was the sound of a latch sliding into place. It was the sound of a door locking, one I had been trying to pry open for 34 years. They were never going to see me. It did not matter if I won a Marlowe or a Nobel Peace Prize or the lottery. To them, I was just the background noise to their main event. I was the extra in the movie of Sloane's life. I unlocked the phone one last time. I did not beg. I did not explain that the Marlowe Guild was the Oscars of the food industry. I did not tell them that this could change my entire career. Have a nice dinner, I typed. I put the phone down on the stainless steel table. The silence in the kitchen felt different now. It was not lonely. It was spacious. I finished cleaning up. I scrubbed the floor with a ferocity that left my arms shaking. I locked the heavy metal door of the commissary and walked to my car. As I sat in the driver's seat, the engine idling, I opened Instagram. Sloane had already posted a story. It had been uploaded 5 minutes ago. The photo was a selfie, taken at a high angle to show off her cleavage and the diamond necklace my parents had bought her for her 40th birthday. In the background, out of focus but clearly visible, were my parents. They were holding up wine glasses, clinking them together in a toast. The location tag was bright and bold, Vino and Cedar. It was the trendiest, most expensive wine bar in downtown Greenville, a place where a glass of Cabernet cost $20, a place I could never afford to take them. The caption read, Family Night, keeping it real with the best people. She had added a lipstick kiss emoji and a wine glass emoji, the best people. I sat there in my cold car, smelling like vinegar, looking at the image of my family toasting to a night without me. They looked happy. They looked relieved. They looked complete. I put the phone away and put the car in gear. I did not cry. I drove home in silence, the radio off, the windows down. The wind hit my face, cold and sharp. 3 weeks later, I stood in the center of a hotel room in Chicago. The room was small, but it had a view of the lake. The bed was stiff, the sheets starched to a crisp white. Hanging on the back of the door was a dress I had bought from a consignment shop. It was a deep emerald green, silk and unforgiving. I had spent $300 on it, money that should have gone toward the next shipment of bottles. But I needed armor. I was alone. I had flown in that morning. I had navigated the train system alone. I had checked in alone. My phone had remained silent all day. No good luck texts. No, we are watching messages. The long Family Connect chat sat dormant, buried under weeks of silence. I zipped the dress up. It fit perfectly. I looked in the mirror. I did not look like the girl who scraped sauce pots in a hoodie. I looked like a woman who ran a company. I looked like a CEO. I applied my lipstick, a dark matte red. I pulled my hair back into a severe, sleek bun. I don't need their permission to exist, I whispered to the reflection. It was a mantra I had been repeating since I booked the flight. It was a terrifying thought. For so long, my existence had been defined by their perception of me. I was the quiet one, the weird one, the one with the little sauce hobby. If I stopped caring about their perception, who was I? I was about to find out. The venue was an old theater, restored to its 1920s glory. Gold leaf peeled from the ceiling in artistic flourishes, and the red velvet curtains were heavy with history. The air smelled of expensive perfume and roasted duck. Waiters moved through the crowd like dancers, carrying trays of champagne. I felt the familiar imposter syndrome clawing at my throat. Everyone here looked important. Men in bespoke suits discussed supply chains. Women in couture gowns laughed about mergers. I clutched my small clutch bag, my knuckles white. Autumn long. I turned. A man with a headset and a clipboard was looking at me. "Yes," I said, my voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. "You are in the third row. Seat 4. We need you close to the stage for the category announcement. You are up in the second block." "Okay, thank you." I found my seat. It was terrifyingly close to the front. I sat down and placed the heavy program on my lap. The lights in the auditorium were dimming. The hum of the crowd began to settle into an expectant hush. Cameras on cranes swooped over the audience, their red tally lights blinking like predatory eyes. This was it. National television, millions of people watching. I opened the program to distract myself. The paper was thick and glossy. I flipped past the advertisements for luxury cars and industrial ovens until I found the section for the Breakthrough Maker Award. There was my name, Autumn Long, founder, Whitaker, and Wild. There was a small bio underneath. I had submitted a standard bio weeks ago, detailing the sauce ingredients and my background in food science, but as I read the text printed on the page, my breath hitched. The bio had been edited. It was not the dry professional text I had sent. The producers had done their own research. They had dug deeper. I read the last line of the paragraph, and the blood drained from my face. It was a simple sentence, just 10 words. But in the context of my family, in the context of the lie we had all been living for decades, it was a grenade. I looked up at the stage where the host, a famous culinary personality known for his investigative storytelling, was walking out to the microphone. He was smiling. He had a reputation for uncovering the real stories behind the food. I looked back down at the program. The words seemed to vibrate on the page. "Oh no," I whispered, the sound lost in the applause of the crowd. "They are going to say it out loud." To understand why I stood frozen in that Chicago theater, terrified of a single sentence in a program, you have to understand the ecosystem of the Long household. In biology, they teach you that an ecosystem can only support one apex predator. In our house, that predator was my sister. Sloane. I was not abused. I was not beaten. I was simply edited out. Growing up, the walls of our hallway were a shrine to Sloane. There were photos of Sloane in her toddler beauty pageant sash. Sloane holding her student body president gavel. Sloane as the homecoming queen. Sloane winning the debate trophy. If you looked closely, really closely, you might find a 5x7 frame tucked behind a lamp in the den. That was me. Usually standing half hidden behind her, looking like a blurred shadow that had accidentally wandered into the frame of a celebrity sighting. My parents called it confidence. They said Sloane had a spark, a fire that needed to be fed. My mother, Marilyn, treated Sloane's moods like weather events that required immediate disaster relief. If Sloane had a pimple before a dance, the household went into lockdown. If Sloane broke up with a boyfriend, the kitchen became a war room where we all had to sit in silence while she wept and threw things. I learned early on that the safest place to be was nowhere near the center. I became an expert in blending into the drywall. I was the quiet one, the easy one, the one who did not require maintenance, while Sloane was practicing her pageant waves and screaming about her hair. I found the kitchen. It started as a hiding spot. The kitchen was the one room Sloane avoided because she claimed the smells lingered in her clothes. For me, it was a sanctuary of logic in a house ruled by emotional chaos. I would sit on the linoleum floor at 2 in the morning, the blue light of a tablet illuminating my face. Watching recipe videos, I fell in love with the chemistry of it. Baking was binary. It was honest. If you added too much baking soda, the cake tasted metallic. If you did not knead the dough enough, the bread was tough. There was no charisma involved. You could not charm a soufflé into rising. You could not bully a sauce into emulsifying. You had to do the work. You had to respect the variables. For a girl whose life felt subject to the whimsical tides of her sister's ego, the strict laws of thermodynamics were a comfort. I remember the first time I tried to show them. I was 14. There was a county youth culinary showcase. It was not a big deal, just a local event in a high school gymnasium. But to me, it was the Olympics. I had spent weeks perfecting a peach and bourbon glaze for pork tenderloin. I had burned my fingers, stained my shirts, and used all my allowance on high-quality vanilla beans. I won first place. I stood there holding a blue ribbon and a certificate printed on cheap cardstock. My chest felt like it was expanding, filling with a helium-light sensation of pride. I looked into the crowd and saw my parents. They were actually there. They were smiling. I walked over to them, holding the ribbon out like an offering. Marilyn patted my shoulder. She looked at the ribbon for exactly 2 seconds. "That is sweet, honey," she said. Her voice was the same tone she used when the dog successfully fetched a stick. Then, without taking a breath, she turned her head. Sloane was standing 5 feet away, typing furiously on her phone. "Sloane, did you see the lighting in here?" Marilyn asked. Her voice suddenly animated, sharp with interest. "It is terrible for photos. Did you get a good angle for your post?" Sloane rolled her eyes, not looking up. "I gained 40 followers since we walked in. Mom, this crowd is tragic, but the engagement is good. 40 followers, my blue ribbon. The physical manifestation of 3 weeks of labor and study was effectively erased by an imaginary number on a screen. My father, Graham, clapped me on the back. 'Good job, kiddo,' he said, his eyes already drifting to the exit sign. 'We should get going. Sloane has that thing tonight. That thing. There was always a thing.' I put the ribbon in my pocket. I crumpled it up. I never hung it on the wall. By the time I was 16, I had stopped trying to compete for airtime. I simply built my own world. I started making small batches of hot sauce and jams. I convinced my parents to drive me to the Saturday farmers market. Not because they supported the vision, but because it got me out of the house so they could focus on Sloane's college applications. The market was hot, loud, and smelled of asphalt and fresh basil. I loved it. I set up a folding table that wobbled on the uneven pavement. I arranged my little 4-ounce jars in a pyramid. I handwrote the labels in black marker. Total strangers would stop. They would dip a pretzel stick into my jalapeno honey reduction. I would watch their faces. I learned to read the micro-expressions of taste, the widening of the eyes, the slight nod, the way they would reach for their wallets before they even finished chewing. "This is incredible," a woman told me once. She was wearing a suit, looking like she had just come from a boardroom. "You have a real palate. This is sophisticated." She bought 6 jars. She handed me a $20 bill and told me to keep the change. It was the first time I felt real. A stranger had exchanged currency for something I created. It was an objective transaction. She did not know my last name. She did not care about my sister. She just liked the work. I went home that day with $140 in cash stuffed into a pencil case. I felt like a tycoon. I walked into the living room, ready to show them that this was viable, that I was building something. Sloane was on the couch, surrounded by shopping bags. She was holding up a pair of designer jeans that cost more than my entire inventory. "Look who is back from the lemonade stand," Sloane said. She smirked. It was not a hostile smirk. It was worse. It was affectionate condescension. "Did you sell all your little jams? That is so cute." "It is not a lemonade stand," I said, gripping the pencil case. "I made over $100. My father looked up from his newspaper. He chuckled. "Hey, that is great. Autumn. Good walking around money. Just do not let playing in the kitchen distract you from your grades. You need to get into a decent school if you want to catch up to your sister. Playing in the kitchen. My mother chimed in from the kitchen, where she was pouring wine. Exactly. It is a nice hobby, sweetie, but you need to think about a real career. Sloan is looking at marketing. Maybe you could do something sensible. Nursing. You are good at being quiet. I stood there, the cash heavy in my pocket. I looked at Sloan, who was now taking a selfie with the jeans, making a duck face at the camera. She was producing nothing. She was contributing nothing. She was simply existing loudly, and for that, she was the star. I was producing a product, managing inventory, and generating revenue, and I was playing. That was the moment I understood the casting of our family drama. Sloan was the protagonist. Her triumphs were plot points. Her failures were tragedies. I was the supporting character. My role was to be stable, uninteresting, and available to clap when required. If the supporting character started having too much success, it distracted from the main plot. It confused the audience. So I learned to be quiet about the wins. I stopped showing them the cash. I stopped talking about the recipes. I let them believe I was just tinkering, but the silence did not stop the hurt. It just pressurized it. The final crack in the foundation happened the summer before I left for culinary school. I was 18. I had been accepted into a rigorous program in Philadelphia, a science-based culinary institute that focused on food technology and molecular gastronomy. It was prestigious. It was hard to get into. My parents had barely reacted to the acceptance letter. They were too busy planning Sloane's graduation party from her state college, a blowout event with a catered tent and a DJ. It was 2 a.m. I was in the kitchen, packing my knife roll. I heard footsteps in the hallway. My parents were coming back from the garage, where they had been arguing about the budget for the party. They stopped just outside the kitchen archway. They did not know I was there. "I cannot believe the caterer wants $4,000, my father hissed. "That is robbery. We have to do it." "Graham," my mother whispered back. "Sloan expects it. Everyone will be there. We cannot look cheap." I know. It is just tight right now." "Well, at least we do not have to worry about Autumn's tuition being too high." My mother said. She laughed. A low, dismissive sound. "It is a trade school. Basically, how expensive can cooking classes be? It is not cheap." "Marilyn," my father said, "but honestly, I give it 6 months." My hand froze on the handle of my chef's knife. I stood perfectly still in the dark. "What do you mean?" my mother asked. "I mean this food phase," he said. He sounded tired, resigned. "She is just doing it because she is introverted and likes to hide. Once she gets out there and realizes she has to actually hustle, she will fold. She does not have Sloane's drive." "True," my mother agreed. "She will come back home. She will realize she needs real money, not whatever this is. We will probably have to support her until she finds a husband." They walked past the doorway, heading up the stairs. I stood in the dark for a long time. The streetlights outside cast long, distorted shadows across the countertops. She does not have Sloane's drive. She will come back home. She needs real money. I looked down at my knife roll. It was heavy canvas, filled with tools I had bought with my own money from the market sales. A sharpening stone, a digital thermometer, a high-precision scale. They thought this was a phase. They thought I was retreating. They did not understand that I was not hiding in the kitchen. I was arming myself. I zipped up the bag. The sound was loud in the empty room, like a zipper closing on a body bag. I did not sleep that night. I sat by the window and watched the sun come up over the driveway where Sloane's new car was parked, a graduation gift I was told we all chipped in for, even though I had never seen a dime of my own money go toward it. I made a promise to myself as the sky turned gray and then gold. I would go to Philadelphia. I would learn everything. I would master the science of flavor until it was undeniable. And I would never, ever ask them for a single penny of their real money again. If I was going to be a supporting character, I would be the one who walked off the set and spun off into a show that canceled theirs. But standing in that kitchen at 18, listening to them bet against my future, I did not know yet how hard it would be. I did not know that the distance between playing in the kitchen and breakthrough maker was paved with burns, debt, and the specific, hollow ache of proving people wrong who were not even watching. And I certainly did not know that 18 years later, a single line in a program in Chicago would prove that they had not just bet against me. They had been actively collecting on the wager. The scholarship letter arrived in a thick, cream-colored envelope that felt heavy in my hands. It was a full ride to the culinary science program at the Philadelphia Institute of Gastronomy. To anyone else, this was a golden ticket, a validation of talent and potential. To my family, it was a quaint little brochure for an extended hobby. I remember packing my car, a 10-year-old sedan with a rusting bumper and a trunk that only opened if you hit it in the right spot with the heel of your hand. I was loading boxes of textbooks and my knife kit when Sloane wandered out onto the driveway. She was wearing a silk robe and holding a mug of coffee, watching me struggle with a heavy crate of kitchen tools. "So let me get this straight," she said, blowing steam off her coffee. "You are moving 400 miles away and paying tuition to learn how to stir." I stopped, balancing the crate on my knee. "It is a science degree." "Sloane, it is chemistry." "Right," she said. "Chemistry for soup." My mother, Marilyn, stepped out onto the porch behind her. She wrapped an arm around Sloane's waist, looking at me with that pitying, benevolent smile usually reserved for children who have drawn unrecognizable pictures. "Be nice, Sloane," Mom said. She shushed her, but her eyes were dancing with amusement. "Let Autumn have her little adventure. It will be a fun experience for her, like a really intense summer camp." I slammed the trunk shut. It took 2 tries. I did not say goodbye. I just got in the driver's seat and turned the key. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw them still standing there, framed by the manicured lawn and the white pillars of the house. A perfect tableau of the life I was escaping. They looked small in the rearview mirror. They looked like they belonged in a museum exhibit about people who never had to work for anything. Philadelphia was not a summer camp. It was a cold, gray, relentless grind that chewed me up and spat me out every single day for 2 years. The scholarship covered my classes, but it did not cover the rent for the basement studio apartment I found in South Philly. The place had one window that looked out onto a brick wall, and the radiator clanked so loudly at night it sounded like someone was taking a hammer to the pipes. I woke up every morning at 4 o'clock to work the opening shift at a bakery. I wheeled carts of ingredients up from the cellar and stacked supply boxes until my shoulders felt like they'd been wrung out. My hands turned into a map of calluses and flour-ground creases. I smelled like yeast and desperate fatigue. By 8 in the morning, I was in class, learning the thermal breakdown of proteins and the viscosity of emulsions. By 4 in the afternoon, I was at my second job, washing dishes in a dive bar, scrubbing grease off plates until my hands were raw and my cuticles bled. I cried. I cried in the walk-in refrigerator at the bakery, the cold air freezing the tears on my cheeks. I cried in the bathroom of the dive bar. I cried on the subway when I was too tired to stand but there were no seats. But I never called home. I never asked for money. Every time I thought about dialing my father's number, I heard his voice in my head saying I needed real money. That voice was the fuel. It burned hotter than any oven in the city. My break came in the form of a disaster. I had secured a stage and unpaid internship at Iron and Ash, one of the most acclaimed restaurants in the city. The head chef was Matteo Klein, a man whose reputation was built on terrifying precision. He did not scream like the chefs on television. He did not throw plates. He simply observed. If you made a mistake, he would look at you with a quiet, disappointed intensity that made you want to dissolve into the floor drain. I was placed on the garde-manger station, responsible for cold appetizers and salads. It was the lowest rung on the ladder, but I treated every radish like it was a diamond. One night, the sauce chef walked out in the middle of service. He just threw his apron on the floor and left. The kitchen stalled. Tickets were printing. The machine chattering like a machine gun. Chef Matteo looked around the kitchen. His eyes landed on me. "You," he said, "can you work a sauté station?" I had never worked the hotline in a service this busy. I nodded anyway. "Yes, chef. Get on the sauce," he said. "Do not sink us." For the next 5 hours, I did not think, I did not feel. I entered a fugue state of pure reaction. I reduced wine, I mounted butter, I tasted, adjusted, plated, and wiped the rim. My movements were efficient, stripped of any wasted energy. I was the quiet one. Remember, I knew how to disappear into the work. At 1 in the morning, after the last plate had gone out and the kitchen was being scrubbed down, Chef Mateo called me to the pass. He was eating a spoonful of the bordelaise sauce I had made. He took a long time to swallow. He looked at me, really looked at me. For the first time in 3 months, "You have a palate," he said. "Thank you." "Chef," I whispered, "most of these kids, they come out of culinary school wanting to make foams and gels," he said, gesturing to the empty kitchen. "They want to be artists. They chase trends because they want to be famous. You understand the foundation. You do not chase trends. You build flavors." He put the spoon down. "You are off dishes. You are on the line now." That was the only validation I received. And it was the only kind I needed. It was based on merit. It was based on the result on the spoon, not the personality of the cook. Over the next 3 years, I worked my way up. I became obsessed with the concept of mother sauces, the 5 fundamental sauces of French cuisine, and how to modernize them for the way people actually ate. I watched the other cooks, exhausted after 12-hour shifts, eating fast food or frozen burritos because they were too tired to cook for themselves. I saw a gap. People wanted real food. They wanted the depth of flavor that came from a 6-hour reduction. But they had 15 minutes between getting home from work and putting the kids to bed. I started experimenting in the commissary kitchen I rented by the hour on Sunday mornings. I wanted to create a line of sauces that were not just condiments, but foundations. A jar that you could pour over roasted vegetables or seared chicken and instantly have a meal that tasted like it came from iron and ash. I focused on bold, clean ingredients, no gums, no stabilizers, just chemistry and patience. I made a roasted garlic and Calabrian chili sauce that had a slow, humming heat. I made a lemon dill reduction that tasted like spring sunlight. I called the brand Whitaker and Wild. Whitaker was my grandmother's maiden name, the only person in my family who had ever cooked with joy, and Wild was what I felt like I was becoming. I had no marketing budget. I had no strategy. I just had a phone with a cracked screen and a tripod I bought at a discount store. One Tuesday night at 2 in the morning, delirious with exhaustion, I decided to film a video. I did not put on makeup. I did not fix my hair. I did not turn on a ring light to smooth out my skin. I set the phone up on a stack of overturned crates. The camera frame showed only my hands in the pot. I recorded the sound of the onions hitting the hot oil, that aggressive, sharp sizzle. I recorded the glug of the wine deglazing the pan. I zoomed in on the texture of the sauce as it coated the back of a wooden spoon. I did not speak. I just put text over the video. POV. You want a chef-quality dinner, but you have zero energy. Let the sauce do the work. I posted it to a new account I had created for the brand. I had 12 followers. 5 of them were bots. I put the phone in my pocket and went back to scrubbing the pots. I went home, slept for 4 hours, and woke up to a phone that was so hot, it felt like it was burning my hand. I blinked, trying to clear the sleep from my eyes. The notifications were scrolling so fast they were a blur. 50,000 likes, 100,000 likes, 2,000 comments. I opened the video. It had hit the algorithm. People were mesmerized by the honesty of it. There was no influencer face talking about their perfect life. There was no frantic editing. It was just food. It was real. The comments were a flood of validation. I need this. I am so tired of cooking. Where can I buy this? The sound of that sear just healed my soul. Finally, something that does not look like fake plastic food. I sat on the edge of my mattress, staring at the numbers. It was the opposite of the blue ribbon moment. My family was not there to ignore it. The world was there, and they were paying attention. Then, I saw the email. It had come in 10 minutes ago. The subject line was professional. Succinct, wholesale inquiry. Mid-Atlantic Provisions. My breath hitched. Mid-Atlantic Provisions was a regional grocery distributor. They supplied high-end markets from Philadelphia to Dixie. They were not Walmart, but they were the gatekeepers to the shelves I dreamed of. I opened the email with shaking fingers. Dear Ms. Long, we came across your product on social media this morning. The engagement is impressive, but we are more interested in the product profile. We are looking to expand our artisan pantry section, and your focus on clean, high-quality convenience fits our current buyer trends. We would like to request samples and set up a meeting to discuss potential distribution. I read it twice. Then I read it again. I looked around my tiny apartment. I looked at the pile of laundry in the corner. I looked at the burn scars on my arms. I thought about Sloane's summer camp comment. I thought about my mother's smile. I typed a reply. I did not call my parents. I did not send a screenshot to the group chat. I simply wrote back to the distributor, confirmed my availability, and hit send. I stood up and walked to the small kitchenette. I poured myself a glass of tap water and raised it to the empty room. To the stir, I said aloud, and then I went to work. If culinary school was a lesson in chemistry, starting a manufacturing business was a brutal education in physics, specifically, the physics of breaking points. I learned very quickly that making 5 gallons of sauce in a restaurant kitchen is an art, but making 500 gallons for retail is a war against logistics. The transition from iron and ash to becoming the CEO of Whitaker and Wild was not a smooth upward trajectory. It was a series of panic attacks disguised as business meetings. The first hurdle was the glass. I had secured a contract with the distributor, Mid-Atlantic Provisions, but I had underestimated the global supply chain. I needed 6,000 units of 8-ounce flint glass jars with a lug finish. My supplier in New Jersey called me on a Tuesday to tell me that a ship was stuck in a canal somewhere halfway across the world, and my glass was effectively being held hostage. I spent 3 days on the phone, my voice cracking from stress, cold calling every glass manufacturer in the tri-state area. I eventually found a surplus lot in Ohio, but I had to drive a rental truck 12 hours through a snowstorm to pick them up myself because I could not afford the freight shipping. That drive was the reality of my life for the next year. I was the head chef, the janitor, the delivery driver, and the accountant. To keep the overhead low enough to survive the margins, I moved the operation back to Greenville. It was a strategic retreat, not a surrender. I rented a 200-square-foot office in a converted textile mill that had been carved up into industrial workspaces. It was the kind of place where the freight elevator rattled ominously and the fluorescent lights hummed in the key of B-flat. I shared the floor with a woman who made soy candles and a guy who ran a screen printing business for local bands. The air in our hallway was a dizzying cocktail of my vinegar reductions, her lavender essential oils, and his curing plastisol ink. It smelled like hustle. My office was barely a room. It was a glass-walled cube with a desk I had found on the curb and a whiteboard covered in inventory numbers. This was where Whitaker and Wild lived. One afternoon, after successfully negotiating a lower price on organic tomatoes from a farm in the upstate, I felt that familiar, dangerous urge to share the news. The dopamine hit of the deal was too strong to contain. I picked up the phone and dialed my mother. She answered on the third ring. I could hear the television in the background. "Hey, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just wanted to tell you something good. I just locked in the supply chain for the new spicy maple glaze. We are going to be able to drop the unit cost by 12%. That means I can finally hire a part-time packer." There was a pause. I heard the clinking of ice in a glass. "That is nice, honey," she said. Her tone was the auditory equivalent of patting a dog on the head. 12%. That sounds good. "It is huge. Mom, it means the business is actually sustainable." "Right, sustainable," she said, her interest evaporating. "Hold on a second. Sloane wants to show me something. Here, talk to your sister." Before I could object, before I could explain that this was not just math but survival, The phone was fumbled. "Hey." Sloane's voice came on the line. She sounded breathless, not from exertion, but from the manufactured excitement she used for her social media stories. "Mom said you are excited about tomatoes or something. It is about the margins." "Sloane," I said, feeling the joy drain out of me like water from a cracked jar. "Never mind. What are you doing? I am literally freaking out," she said. "I have a brand partnership with an athleisure company. We are doing a shoot in the backyard. I need to look like I'm doing yoga. But, like, rich yoga. Do you think the lighting is better by the pool or by the gazebo?" I looked around my office. I looked at the stack of unpaid invoices. I looked at the whiteboard where I had calculated exactly how many days I could survive if the next check from the distributor was late. "The gazebo," I said. "The light is softer. You are a lifesaver," she said. "Okay, gotta go. Love you. Mean it." The line went dead. I put the phone down on the scratched surface of my desk. I did not feel angry anymore. I felt a cold, sharp clarity. They were playing house. I was building a house. Those were two very different activities. I channeled that coldness into the work. I stopped looking for their validation and started hunting for the market's validation. A week later, a local lifestyle magazine ran a feature on the new taste of the South. They included a paragraph about Whitaker and Wild. The writer, a woman named Sarah, who had actually tasted the product, wrote a line that changed everything. She called my sauces weekday-proof comfort. She wrote, "Autumn Long is not selling a condiment. She is selling 20 minutes of your life back." You open the jar, and suddenly, a Tuesday night chicken breast tastes like a Friday night reservation. That phrase, weekday-proof comfort, struck a nerve. It got picked up by a larger food blog in Atlanta, then a parenting aggregate site linked to it. Orders started ticking up. My Shopify app began to make that little cha-ching cash register sound every hour, then every 30 minutes. I joined a national incubator program for emerging food brands. It was a remote program that required me to travel once a month for intensive workshops. I started flying to trade shows in Nashville, Austin, and New York. These were not glamorous trips. I stayed in budget motels near the convention centers. I spent 10 hours a day standing on concrete floors in comfortable shoes, handing out samples on biodegradable spoons. I said the same pitch 400 times a day. "Hi, would you like to taste a better dinner? Hi. Clean ingredients, no gums, low sodium. Hi. Yes, I developed the recipes myself. I lost my voice. I got blisters on my heels. But I also got orders, real orders. Boutique grocery chains in Texas, a subscription box in California. While I was building this brick by brick, I noticed something happening on my sister's Instagram feed. Sloane had always been a chameleon, shifting her personality to match whatever man she was dating or whatever trend was peaking, but now, she was shifting into me. It started subtly. She posted a photo of a salad. The caption read, "Fueling my body with clean ingredients. It is so important to know what you are putting in your system." I stared at the screen. Sloane's idea of fueling her system had historically been diet soda and whatever was trendy at the wine bar. Then came the phrasing. She started using words I used in my marketing copy: mindful nourishment, flavor without compromise, building a lifestyle. She posted a video of herself in her kitchen, a kitchen that was pristine because it was never used chopping a bell pepper. She was holding the knife wrong. Her fingers were splayed out. A recipe for a severed tendon. "Cooking is just my therapy," she told the camera, smiling that bright, practiced smile. It is about slowing down and respecting the process. She was not cooking. She was performing cooking. She was wearing a linen apron that cost $200 and had clearly just been unfolded from the packaging. I wanted to comment. I wanted to say, "Tuck your fingers. Sloane." I wanted to say, "You are cutting that pepper like it owes you money." But I didn't. I realized that to her. My career was just another aesthetic to try on. It was a costume. The difference was, when she took the costume off, she went back to her life of leisure. When I took my apron off, I went to my second job managing people. By the end of the second year, Whitaker and Wild was no longer a one-woman show. I had hired my first full-time employee, a sharp 22-year-old named Leo who handled fulfillment. Then I hired a kitchen manager, then a social media coordinator, someone who actually understood engagement. Unlike my sister, we were a team of 5. We moved out of the warehouse and into a dedicated facility with a loading dock. The pressure shifted. It was no longer just about my survival. I was responsible for 5 other people's rent. I was responsible for their health insurance. That weight settled on my shoulders like a heavy winter coat, comforting and suffocating at the same time. One Tuesday morning, Leo walked into my office. "Autumn," he said, holding his phone. "You have a call on line 1. It is a producer from Chicago." I frowned, looking up from a spreadsheet detailing the rising cost of vinegar. "A sales call, no," he said, his eyes wide. "A TV producer. From the network." I picked up the phone. My heart did a slow, heavy thud in my chest. "This is Autumn Long," I said. "Ms. Long." A woman's voice said, crisp, fast, professional. "My name is Jessica, and I am a segment producer for The American Table. We are developing a series on unexpected founders, people who built brands from the ground up without venture capital, without the typical safety nets. We have been tracking your growth metrics and the buzz around your weekday-proof concept. We would love to interview you." I sat back in my chair. The American Table was huge. It was the kind of show my parents watched. Unexpected founders. I repeated, "Exactly." The producer said, "We love the grit of your story. The warehouse, the rental truck, the science background. It is authentic. We want to feature you." We talked for 20 minutes. She asked about my background. She asked about the struggles. For the first time, I told the story not as a tragedy, but as a strategy. I told her about the glass shortage. I told her about the shared warehouse. I did not mention my family. I did not mention the loneliness. I kept it strictly business. "This is great." "Autumn," she said at the end of the call, "I think you are exactly what we are looking for. We are going to be in touch very soon." I hung up. I looked at Leo, who was hovering in the doorway. "They want to put us on TV," I said. Leo pumped his fist. "Yes." Finally I smiled. It was a real smile. But it was tired. I was so tired. 3 days later, the email arrived. I assumed it was the producer following up. I was sitting at my desk, eating a cold sandwich at 8 in the evening. The office was dark. The only light coming from my monitor. I clicked on the notification. It was not from the producer. It was from the Marlowe Guild. I stopped chewing. The Marlowe Guild. The name alone carried a weight that made the air in the room feel thin. They were the oldest, most respected culinary organization in the country. They did not do segments. They gave awards that made careers. I opened the email. "Dear Ms. Long, the board of directors is pleased to inform you." I scanned the text, expecting to see the word nomination. That was how it worked. You got nominated, you went to a dinner, you lost to a chef from New York, and you went home happy to have been included. But the word nomination was missing. That you have been selected as the recipient of this year's Breakthrough Maker Award. Recipient, not a contender, a winner, confirmed win. The sandwich dropped from my hand onto the wrapper. I stared at the screen. The white light burned into my retinas. I had won. I had actually won. I did not call my mother. I did not call Sloan. I sat in the dark, surrounded by the empire I had built out of vinegar and stubbornness, and I felt a terrified thrill run down my spine, because I knew what this meant. This wasn't just a plaque. This was a national stage. This was undeniable proof, and for the first time in my life, I realized that proving them wrong might be more dangerous than being ignored, because once they saw the light, they would come looking for the switch. I reached for my phone, my thumb hovering over the family group chat, the cycle beginning all over again. But this time, the stakes were not a blue ribbon in a high school gym. The stakes were $100 million of perceived value. Though I did not know that number yet, all I knew was that I was about to walk into the spotlight, and I was going to do it alone. The glow of the computer monitor was the only light left in the building. It cast a blue sterile wash over my hands as they rested on the keyboard. The email from the Marlowe Guild was still open on the screen. A static image that felt like a hallucination. Winner. I had spent the last hour pacing the small length of my office, adrenaline making my fingertips tingle. I had checked the sender address 5 times. I had forwarded it to Leo just to make sure it opened on another device. It was real. The highest honor in my industry was mine. Now came the part that always terrified me more than any bank loan rejection or health inspection. The family notification. I picked up my phone. It felt heavy, like a dense brick of lead. I opened the long Family Connect chat. The last message was from 3 days ago. A photo from my mother of a new patio set she was considering buying. No one had replied to it. I started to type. My thumb hovered over the letters, trembling slightly. "Hey everyone," I typed. "I have big news." I deleted it. It sounded too eager, too childish. It sounded like the girl who ran in from the driveway holding a blue ribbon. "I just wanted to let you know." I tried again. "I won an award." I deleted that too. It was too passive. It gave them room to ask, "Which award?" in a tone that implied it was likely a participation trophy. I needed to frame this correctly. I needed to speak their language, the language of status and visibility. I needed them to understand that this was not a ribbon at a county fair. This was national validation. I took a breath and typed the third draft. I chose my words with the same precision I used to balance acidity in a tomato reduction. I just received official confirmation that I have won the Marlowe Guild Breakthrough Maker Award. It is the most prestigious honor in the culinary industry. There is a ceremony in Chicago next month that will be broadcast live on national television. I would love for you to come, or at least watch the broadcast. This is a career-defining moment for me. I read it over. It was factual. It was impressive. It mentioned national television, which was the only currency my sister, Sloane, truly respected. I hit send. The timestamp read 10:12 at night. I set the phone down on the desk, face up. I told myself I would not stare at it. I picked up a pen and tried to review the inventory sheets for the next quarter. 1 minute passed. My eyes flicked to the phone. Nothing. 2 minutes passed. Then, the gray bubbles appeared. Someone was typing. I felt a spike of anxiety in my chest, a physical tightening that made it hard to breathe. The bubbles pulsed rhythmically. Dot, dot, dot. Then they disappeared. Someone had typed a response, looked at it, and decided not to send it. I knew what that meant. They were talking in a side channel. Sloane and my mother had a separate thread, a private line where they dissected the world before presenting a unified front. I could imagine the conversation. What is this thing she is talking about? Do we have to go? I do not have anything to wear to Chicago in November. The bubbles appeared again, then vanished again. It was agonizing. It was a digital representation of my place in the family hierarchy. I was the topic of discussion, but not a participant. I was a problem to be solved, a schedule conflict to be managed. Finally, a message popped up. It was from Sloane. I reached for the phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. Maybe she was looking up flights. Maybe, just for once, the magnitude of the win had broken through her narcissism. I read the text. "We don't have time for your stupid award. Dad booked dinner." The words seemed to float on the screen, detached from reality. Stupid award. It was not just a rejection. It was an insult. She had not asked what the award was. She had not asked when the date was. She had simply seen something that threatened to pull attention away from her. And she had moved to crush it. The word stupid was a reflex, a defensive weapon she had been using against me since we were 6 years old. I stared at the phone, waiting for my mother to correct her. Surely, Marilyn Long, the woman who obsessed over public appearances, would care about a national television broadcast. My mother's message arrived 30 seconds later. Reservations were already made. "Honey, you know how hard it is to get a table for 4 on a Friday. A table for 4. I did the math in my head. Mom, Dad, Sloane. That was 3. Who was the 4th Sloane's husband? Elliot. Or perhaps just an empty seat where a supportive parent should have been. Or maybe they simply assumed I would fail to show up. As I was busy with my little jars, so they secured the table just in case I decided to be a dutiful daughter and abandon my work. Then came the final notification. My father. He did not type a sentence. He did not offer an excuse. He simply tapped the reaction button on Sloane's message. A small, yellow thumbs-up emoji appeared next to the sentence. "We don't have time for your stupid award." That little icon was a gavel banging down. It was my father signing off on the cruelty. He was agreeing with the assessment. The award was stupid. The dinner was vital. I felt the old instinct rising in my throat. A desperate, pathetic urge to fix this. I wanted to type, "But Dad, this is like the Oscars for food." I wanted to type, "Mom, I am going to be on the same channel you watch every morning." I wanted to beg them to see me. I wanted to explain that I had built a company that employed 5 people, that I had generated revenue, that I was not playing anymore. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. I started to type, "Please, just listen." I stopped. I looked at the cursor blinking at the end of the line. Why was I explaining? Why was I trying to sell my own worth to people who had decided 30 years ago that I had none? Every time I explained, I gave them the power to judge. Every time I begged, I validated their authority to withhold approval. I was 34 years old. I was a CEO. And I was sitting in a dark office at 10 at night, about to plead with a woman who still treated me like a moody teenager. Something inside me snapped. It was not a loud snap. It was a quiet, clean break, like a dry twig stepping on in a winter wood. I backspaced. I erased the plea. I erased the explanation. I took a deep breath. The air in the office smelled of cleaning solution and dried spices. It smelled like my life. I typed 5 words. "That is fine. Have a nice dinner." I hit send. I put the phone down. I waited for the panic to set in. The guilt that usually followed when I did not fight for their affection. But it did not come. Instead, I felt a strange, hollow calm. I did not add a sad emoji. I did not add a passive-aggressive, "wish you could be there." I gave them exactly what they wanted, compliance. But it was a compliance stripped of emotional labor. I was no longer doing the work of being the disappointed daughter. I was just done. I stood up and walked to the window. The parking lot was empty. My reflection in the glass looked tired, but steady. My phone buzzed again. I walked back to the desk. I knew I should not look, but the habit was a muscle memory I could not fully paralyze yet. It was an Instagram notification. Sloane had posted a story. I opened it. The photo was high resolution, likely taken with the newest phone model she had demanded for her birthday. It showed my parents sitting at a table at Vino and Cedar, the most expensive restaurant in downtown Greenville. The lighting was low and golden. They were holding up glasses of red wine. My mother was laughing, her head thrown back. My father looked content, the menu open in front of him. The caption was written in a white, modern font across the bottom of the image. "Taking my parents somewhere nice tonight." She had added a nail painting emoji and a winking face. Somewhere nice. The implication was clear. My world. The warehouse, the hairnets, the smell of vinegar. The hard work was not nice. It was dirty. It was beneath them. Nice was consumption. Nice was being served. Nice was pretending you were wealthy while your daughter paid the bill with money she borrowed from your parents, a fact I suspected but had never confirmed. She was mocking me. She was telling her followers, and me, that while I was off chasing my stupid award, the real family was here, enjoying the finer things. I looked at the photo one last time. I looked at my parents' faces. They did not look like they missed me. They looked relieved. The difficult piece of the puzzle was gone, and the picture was finally perfect. I closed the app. I did not reply to the group chat. I turned off the monitor, plunging the office into darkness. I picked up my bag and walked out the door, leaving the silence behind me. 2 weeks later, I sat in a green room in Chicago. The air conditioning was humming loudly. I was wearing the emerald green dress, the silk cool against my skin. A makeup artist was dabbing powder on my forehead, telling me that the lights on stage would be hot. "You have great skin," she said. "You must drink a lot of water." "I try," I said. my voice sounding distant to my own ears. A production assistant, a young man with a headset around his neck, walked in carrying a clipboard. "Ms. Long," he said, "we are about 20 minutes out. I just wanted to run through the segment order with you so there are no surprises." "Okay," I said. He handed me a sheet of paper. "So, the host will do the intro, then we go to a commercial break. When we come back, we are doing a short documentary-style video about your background. Then you walk out, receive the award, and give your speech. 3 minutes max on the speech. Please." I nodded, scanning the paper. I saw the time slots: 8:15 intro, 8:20 commercial, 8:25 video package. My eyes stopped on the title of the video package. The producers had interviewed me for hours over Zoom. They had asked about my childhood, about the struggle to be taken seriously, about the science behind the sauce. I had been honest, perhaps too honest, about the isolation of the early days. The title of the segment was printed in bold, black letters. "The people who didn't see her coming." I stared at the words. It was not a title about sauce. It was not a title about culinary science. It was a title about underestimation. "Is the title okay?" the assistant asked, noticing my stare. "The producers thought it really captured the underdog energy of your story." I felt a smile tug at the corner of my mouth. It was not a nice smile. It was a sharp, dangerous thing. "It is perfect," I said. I thought about the group chat. I thought about the thumbs up emoji. I thought about the photo at Vino and Cedar. They were right. They did not have time for my stupid award. And because they did not have time, they had no idea what was about to happen. They thought they were the main characters of the Long family saga. They thought I was just the extra who had wandered off set. They did not realize that the cameras were pointed at me now, and for the first time in history, the microphone was on, and they were the ones who were going to be watching in silence. 5 minutes to places," someone shouted in the hallway. I stood up. I smoothed the silk over my hips. I checked my reflection in the mirror. "Ready?" the makeup artist asked. "I have been ready for 34 years, I said. I walked out of the green room and toward the stage, the sound of applause already rising like a tide in the distance. The auditorium in Chicago was not just a room. It was a cavern of gold leaf and velvet, pressurized by the collective ego of 3,000 people who believed that what they ate for dinner determined their moral standing in the universe. I stood in the wings, hidden by a heavy black curtain, watching the stage manager count down with his fingers. 5, 4, 3. My heart was not beating, it was vibrating, a low, terrifying hum that started in my chest and radiated out to my fingertips. The lights out there were brighter than anything I had ever experienced. They cut through the darkness like physical beams of heat. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling. For a split second, the armor cracked. The emerald dress, the professional makeup, the title of CEO, it all felt like a costume. I felt like the fraud my family had always implied I was. Who was I to stand on this stage? I was the girl who scraped pots. I was the girl who cried in the walk-in cooler. I was the girl whose own father had given a thumbs up to her humiliation. "You are just playing in the kitchen." His voice echoed in my head. "You need real money." I reached into my clutch bag. I needed something to ground me. My fingers brushed against the cool glass screen of my phone. It buzzed. A single, short vibration. I pulled it out, shielding the screen from the stage manager's glare. It was a text message from Chef Mateo. He was not in the audience. He was back in Philadelphia, likely running the pass during the dinner rush, screaming at a line cook for oversearing a scallop. But he was watching. The text was 2 words: "Do not shrink." I stared at the screen. He knew. He knew the instinct I had to fold myself into a smaller shape, to apologize for taking up space. He had seen me do it for years before he trained it out of me. Do not shrink. I put the phone away. I closed my eyes and took a breath. I inhaled the scent of the theater dust, electricity, and expensive perfume. I exhaled the scent of the commissary kitchen vinegar, cardboard, and fatigue. And the winner is, the host's voice boomed through the massive speakers, vibrating in the floorboards under my heels. For her revolutionary approach to accessible culinary craft, Autumn Long, Whitaker, and Wilde. The applause hit me like a physical wave. I stepped out from behind the curtain. The light was blinding. It wiped out the first 10 rows of the audience. I walked to the center of the stage, my heels clicking on the polished wood. I did not stumble. I did not look down. I found the red light on the center camera, the unblinking eye that was beaming my face into millions of living rooms across the country. I took the trophy. It was heavy, a solid block of crystal that caught the light and fractured it into 1,000 rainbows. I stepped to the microphone. The room went silent. I had prepared a speech. I had written it on index cards. But as I looked out into the blinding glare, I realized I did not need the cards. "Thank you," I said. My voice was steady. It sounded deeper than usual, anchored by a new kind of gravity. "This award is heavy. But it is not as heavy as the 50-pound bags of onions my team carries up the stairs every morning." There was a ripple of laughter, warm and surprised. "I accept this on behalf of the people who do the work when no one is watching," I continued. "To my team at the facility in Greenville, who treat every jar like a promise, to Chef Matteo Klein, who taught me that flavor is just chemistry with a soul, and to every person who bought a jar of my sauce because they were too tired to cook but still wanted to feed themselves something real." I paused. This was the moment. This was the part of the speech where the winner usually choked up and thanked their family. This was where I was supposed to thank my mother for her belief and my father for his support. The silence stretched for 2 seconds. 3. I looked directly into the camera lens. I imagined looking through the glass and straight into the dining room of Vino and Cedar. "I am standing here because I learned that you do not need permission to build something that lasts," I said. "You just need the ingredients, the heat, and the refusal to quit when the world tells you to go home." I lifted the crystal block. "Thank you." I turned and walked off stage. I did not thank my parents. I did not thank my sister. I carved a silhouette of them out of the empty air and left it there for everyone to see. 700 miles away, in the heart of downtown Greenville, the atmosphere at Vino and Cedar was calibrated for maximum pretension. I know exactly what happened in that restaurant. I know it with the clarity of a witness, because in the 21st century, nothing happens in private. I know it because of the security footage that would eventually leak. I know it because of the 3 different cell phone videos that were uploaded to TikTok before I even made it back to my hotel room. My family was seated at table 12, the best table in the house, a curved leather booth that offered a panoramic view of the dining room. Sloane was wearing a silver dress that shimmered under the track lighting. She was holding a glass of Chardonnay, her other hand gesturing wildly as she recounted a story about a receptionist who had been rude to her at the spa. "I mean, do you know who I am?" Sloane was saying, her voice pitching up to cut through the ambient noise. "I have 15,000 followers. I could ruin her business with one story." My mother, Marilyn, was nodding sympathetically, picking at a plate of calamari. "People just do not have standards anymore, Sloane. It is jealousy, pure jealousy." My father, Graham, was not listening. He was scanning the room, looking to see if anyone important had noticed them. He adjusted his tie. He looked satisfied. He was the patriarch of a beautiful family, eating expensive seafood, drinking good wine. The inconvenient daughter was gone, off in Chicago doing her little hobby, and order had been restored. They were living inside their own story, a bubble of self-importance that was airtight. Then, the bartender decided to change the channel. The large flat-screen television above the mahogany bar had been playing a muted football game, but the bartender, a young guy who followed the food scene, knew the Marlowe Awards were on. He grabbed the remote. The screen flickered. The football field was replaced by the interior of the Chicago Theater. The volume was turned up, not loud, but audible enough to drift over the low murmur of conversation and the clinking of silverware. "Started in this very city," the host's voice floated through the restaurant. "At table 12, Sloane was laughing at something my mother said. She did not look up. Tonight's winner, the TV host continued, is a testament to the power of local innovation. A few diners at the bar turned their heads. The name Greenville had caught their attention. Then, the camera cut to the winner. My face, 10 feet tall and high definition, filled the screen above the bar. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read in bold. Gold letters. Autumn Long. Breakthrough Maker winner. At first, only the people at the bar noticed. Then, a woman at the table next to my parents looked up. She frowned. She looked at the TV. Then she looked at the table next to her. She nudged her husband. "Hey," she whispered, loud enough to be heard on the cell phone video recorded by the teenager at table 14. "Isn't that the sister, the one Sloane is always posting about?" The husband looked. He squinted at the TV. Then he looked at Graham. "Holy cow," he said. "That is the Long family." The ripple effect was slow at first, then exponential. It is a strange thing about human psychology. We are wired to notice incongruity, and there was a massive incongruity between the woman being celebrated as a national hero on the television and the family sitting 20 feet away. Completely ignoring her, on the screen, I was giving my speech. The 50-pound bags of onions. In the restaurant, Sloane was taking a selfie with her wine glass. Sloane, it was a woman from across the room. Someone Sloane knew from her yoga studio. She was pointing at the TV. "Sloane, look at his autumn." Sloane froze. The smile dropped from her face like it had been slapped off. She turned her head slowly toward the bar. My mother followed her gaze. My father stopped chewing. They saw me. They saw the crystal trophy. They saw the emerald dress. They saw the audience of 3,000 people hanging on my every word. But more importantly, they saw the caption, "Winner." "Oh my God," Sloane whispered. It was not a whisper of pride. It was a whisper of horror. "She actually won." "I thought she said she was just nominated," my mother stammered, her hand going to her throat. She said it was just a dinner." "She didn't say that," my father said, his voice rough. "She said it was a big deal. We said it was stupid." The volume on the TV seemed to get louder. "I am standing here because I learned that you do not need permission to build something that lasts." My voice from the speakers seemed to fill the restaurant. And then, the room turned. Because Sloane had spent 10 years curating a public image, everyone in that restaurant knew who they were. They knew Sloane was the star. They knew the parents were the supportive pillars. But now, they were watching the quiet one accept a national honor while the supportive family was caught red-handed, eating calamari and ignoring the biggest moment of her life. The phones came out. It started with the teenagers, then the food bloggers, then the nosy neighbors. They weren't filming the TV. They were filming Table 12. They were filming the look of shock on Sloane's face. They were filming my mother's pale, trembling hands. They were filming my father staring at his wine glass, refusing to look up. Sloane noticed the phones, for the first time in her life. She did not pose. She shrank. She realized, with a dawning terror, that the lens was no longer her friend. She was not the protagonist anymore. She was the villain in a scene she hadn't even realized was being filmed, on the television. I finished my speech and walked off stage. The applause on the screen was thunderous. The silence at table 12 was absolute. "We should go," my father muttered, pushing his chair back. "Marilyn, get your purse." "We can't leave," Sloane hissed. "Everyone is looking at us. If we run, we look guilty." "We are guilty," my father snapped. A rare moment of self-awareness that was too little, too late. But the broadcast was not over. The host walked back to the center of the stage. The camera zoomed in on his face. He had that serious, investigative journalist look that signaled a pivot from celebration to revelation. "An incredible speech," the host said to the camera. "But the story of Whitaker and Wilde is not just about sauce. It is about the obstacles that almost stopped it from existing." In the restaurant, the diners went quiet. The phones were still raised, recording the family's reaction in real time. "We have prepared a short look at the journey," the host said. "The late nights, the financial risks, and there is one more reason this win matters so much tonight." He paused for dramatic effect. "Because sometimes, the hardest glass ceiling to break is the one inside your own home." On the screen, the title of the documentary segment faded in over a black background. "The People Who Didn't See Her Coming." At table 12, all the blood drained from my mother's face. She looked like a ghost. She gripped the tablecloth so hard her knuckles turned white. Sloane stopped breathing. My father looked at the screen, and for the first time, I think he understood the magnitude of the check that was coming due. The first image of the documentary appeared on the screen. It was a photo of me at the farmer's market, age 16, looking tired and hopeful. Then, a voiceover began. It was my voice, recorded during the interview. "They told me I was playing in the kitchen," the voiceover said. "They told me I needed real money in the restaurant." A hush fell over the room that was heavier than lead. Every eye was fixed on the Long family, and on the screen. The receipt was being printed, line by line, for the whole world to read. The elevator ride up to the 24th floor of the hotel was the longest 10 seconds of my life. My clutch bag was vibrating. It was not a gentle hum. It was a continuous, frantic buzzing, like a trapped insect fighting to get out. I walked down the hallway, the carpet patterned in dizzying swirls of beige and gold. I swiped my keycard, the little green light flashed, and I stepped into the sanctuary of my room. I let the heavy door click shut behind me, sealing out the noise of the gala, the applause, and the sudden, terrifying visibility. I dropped the bag on the bed. I took off my heels. I poured a glass of water from the carafe on the desk. Then, and only then, did I look at the phone. The screen was a blur of notifications. They were cascading down the glass like rain on a window pane. Text messages, Instagram tags, Twitter mentions, missed calls. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the family group chat first. I expected anger, I expected defense, but I did not expect the sheer, blinding audacity of their confusion. My mother, Marilyn, had sent 12 messages in the span of 10 minutes. "Why didn't you tell us it was this big autumn? Answer the phone. People are staring at us. We look terrible. Why would you let them film us? You said it was an industry thing. You did not say it was the Marlowe Awards." I stared at the text. "You did not say it was the Marlowe Awards." I scrolled up. My previous message, the one I had agonized over, was right there in blue and white. "I just received official confirmation that I have won the Marlowe Guild Breakthrough Maker Award." She was rewriting history in real time. She was trying to gaslight a text message. Then came my father. His messages were shorter, punchier, fueled by the embarrassment of a man who had lost control of the room. "People recognized us. The whole restaurant saw. This is a nightmare. They are filming us. Call off the dogs. Autumn, call off the dogs." As if I had commanded an attack squad. As if I had done anything other than stand on a stage and accept a piece of crystal. And then, Sloane. Her messages were not text. They were voice notes. 6 of them. I pressed play on the first one. I turned the volume down low, not wanting her voice to fill the room. "Autumn, pick up the phone." Her voice was shrill, edged with a panic I had never heard before. "Do you have any idea how stupid I looked?" The waiter literally laughed at me. "You need to post something. Tell them we were celebrating in spirit. Tell them the reservation was a surprise party for you. Fix this, fix this." I let the phone drop onto the duvet. I did not reply. I did not feel the urge to explain. I felt a cold, clinical detachment. I was watching a car crash in slow motion. But I was not in the car. I was standing on the sidewalk. Safe. I switched apps to Twitter. I needed to see what the dogs were doing. It did not take long to find out. The hashtag, #TheSisterWhoCooks, was trending number 3 in the United States. Vino and Cedar was trending number 5. I tapped on the top video. It was footage shot by a diner at the restaurant. The angle was shaky. Likely filmed from under a table or behind a menu, it showed the television screen above the bar, where my face was beaming, huge and triumphant. Then, the camera whipped down and zoomed in on table 12. There they were. The contrast was cinematic. On the TV, I was saying I accept this on behalf of the people who do the work when no one is watching. In the booth, Sloane was inspecting her cuticles. My mother was pointing at a menu item. My father was looking around the room, bored. The caption on the video was brutal in its simplicity. She wins the Oscar of food. They win the award for worst family ever. Marlowe Awards. Justice for Autumn. The video had 2 million views. It had been posted 40 minutes ago. I scrolled through the comments. They were a landslide. Imagine birthing a genius and ignoring her for a calamari appetizer. The way the dad is just existing, no pride, nothing. I would walk through fire for that sauce lady, and her sister cannot even look up from her phone. But the internet, being the hive mind that it is, had not stopped at the dinner video. The detectives had gone to work. Someone had dug through Sloane's old YouTube vlogs. They had found a clip from 3 years ago. It was a day-in-the-life video where Sloane was giving a tour of her parents' kitchen. I clicked on the reposted clip. Sloane was holding the camera selfie style. In the background, out of focus, I was standing at the stove, stirring a pot. "And that is Autumn," Sloane said to the camera, rolling her eyes with a laugh. "She is literally always in here making smells. My sister thinks sauce is a career. Like, calm down. Gordon Ramsay. We are trying to eat real food." The caption on the repost read, "This aged like milk. She built an empire. You built a follower count that is dropping by the second." I checked Sloane's Instagram. The number at the top of her profile was spinning backward like a slot machine in reverse. 10,000 followers gone. 15,000. And the brands were watching. I saw a tweet from the athleisure company Sloane had just partnered with, the one she had been stressing about in the backyard during my tomato crisis. "We believe in empowering women and celebrating success. We are reviewing our current partnerships to ensure they align with our values of support and community." They had tagged Sloane. It was a public execution. My phone rang again. It was Sloane. I watched the name dance on the screen. Sloane calling. I remembered the times I had called her. I remembered calling her when I got my first distributor, and she hung up because she was getting a manicure. I remembered calling her when I broke my wrist moving crates, and she told me to take an Uber to the hospital because she was watching a movie. I pressed the side button on my phone. The ringing stopped. I put the phone on Do Not Disturb. I went into the bathroom. I washed the makeup off my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. Yes, but I looked real. I stripped off the emerald dress and hung it carefully in the closet. I put on the hotel robe. I ordered room service, a burger and fries. I ate it in bed, watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures. I did not watch the news. I did not check the chat. I let the world burn itself out outside my door. For the first time in 34 years, I slept without the weight of their expectations on my chest. I slept like a stone. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the sheer curtains. The sky over Lake Michigan was a piercing, cold blue. I felt calm. It was a new kind of calm. Not the silence of repression, but the silence of resolution. I got out of bed and made coffee. I was just pouring the second cup when there was a frantic pounding on my door. It was not a knock. It was a battering. I knew who it was. I tightened the belt of my robe. I walked to the door. I did not check the peephole. I opened it. Sloane was standing in the hallway. She looked like she had been dragged through a wind tunnel. Her hair, usually a helmet of perfect blonde waves, was matted and pulled back into a messy knot. She was wearing sweatpants and a coat that looked like she had grabbed it from a pile on the floor. Her eyes were red, swollen puffs of flesh. She was not wearing makeup. She had flown here. She must have taken the first flight out of Greenville at 5 in the morning. "Autumn," she croaked. Her voice was wrecked. She pushed past me into the room. She did not ask to come in. She just invaded, bringing the smell of stale airplane air and panic with her. "You have to help me," she said, spinning around to face me. You have to post a video. Right now. We need to do a live. We need to show them we are sisters. We need to say it was a joke." I took a sip of my coffee. I leaned against the doorframe. "It wasn't a joke, Sloan." "I am losing everything," she screamed. The sound cracked in the quiet room. "Do you understand? Everything. The yoga brand dropped me at 3 in the morning. The skincare line sent a termination letter at 4. Even the local boutique, the one Mom likes, they blocked me." She began to pace, her hands pulling at her hair. "They are calling me a narcissist. They are calling me a monster. Me. I have spent 10 years building this brand, 10 years of content, and it is gone in one night because you had to go and win that stupid award and let them film us." She was still doing it. She was still blaming the award. She was still the victim. "I didn't let them film you," I said calmly. "You filmed yourselves. You have been filming yourselves for years. This time, someone just changed the angle." Sloan stopped pacing. She looked at me with wild, desperate eyes. "You don't get it," she whispered. "It is not just the brands." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. Her hand was shaking so badly she almost dropped it. "Someone sent me an email," she said. "An anonymous email. It came in while I was in the taxi on the way here." She held the phone out to me. "I don't know what this is," she said, her voice trembling. "But it looks like a spreadsheet of Mom and Dad's accounts, and my accounts." I took the phone. The screen was bright. It displayed a PDF attachment. It was a financial ledger. I zoomed in. The columns were clearly labeled: loan out, gift, rent subsidy, credit card payoff. The dates went back 5 years. I saw the numbers: $5,000 here, $10,000 there. "I have never seen this before," Sloan said, tears streaming down her face, cutting tracks through the oil on her skin. "Why does it say they paid off my credit card in 2022? I told everyone I paid that off with my affiliate money. Why does it say they have been paying my rent?" I looked at the numbers. October 2021, a transfer of $8,000 labeled Sloan, car payment. That was the same month my business almost went under. That was the month I had asked my father for a $5,000 loan to buy jars, and he had told me he was liquid poor and couldn't help. He had told me I needed to learn fiscal responsibility. I looked at Sloan. For the first time, she wasn't performing. She was genuinely terrified. She was realizing that her entire life, her independence, her success, her brand was a subsidized lie. "Who sent this?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "Who would have this?" I handed the phone back to her. "I don't know." I lied, but I had a feeling. I thought about the anonymous tip lines, the way the internet worked, the way secrets have a way of rotting the container they are kept in until they spill out. "But it looks like the internet isn't the only thing you lost today," I said. Sloan stared at the spreadsheet, her face pale. "They told me I was making it on my own," she whispered. "They told me I was the successful one." "They lied," I said. "To both of us." I walked over to the window and looked out at the city. The wind was whipping the flags on the poles below. "You should order some room service." "Sloan," I said, not turning around. "You look like you're going to need your strength." Because the spreadsheet was just the beginning. The brands dropping her was a business problem, but the money was a legal problem. And if I knew anything about my parents, they didn't use their own money to fund Sloan's life. They used whatever money they could get their hands on. And I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly where it had come from. The room service cart sat untouched near the window, the eggs cold and rubbery under the silver dome. Sloan was sitting on the edge of the other bed, scrolling through the PDF on her phone with a manic, obsessive rhythm. Every few seconds, she would let out a small, sharp breath, like she had been pricked with a needle. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered. October 29th, 2022, $5,000 for creative consultation. I never did any consulting. That was the week I went to Cabo. I was sitting in the armchair, watching her unravel. My own phone was in my lap, silent. "Keep scrolling," I said. My voice was flat. Look at the source column. Sloane frowned, pinching the screen to zoom in. Source W&W dividends via GL Trust. She looked up at me. Her brow furrowed. What is W&W? I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Whitaker and Wild, I said. Sloane's mouth opened slightly. Your sauce company. My company. But how? She looked back at the screen. Mom and Dad don't have shares in your company. You own it. I do, I said. But when I started, back in the warehouse days, I needed a guarantor for the initial equipment lease. Dad signed the paperwork. He set up a trust to handle the liability, or so he said. He told me it was just a formality to protect their assets in case I failed. I stood up and walked over to her. I looked down at the glowing screen. I paid that lease off 3 years ago, I said. But I kept depositing a percentage of profits into that trust account because Dad said it was a rainy day fund for the family. He said it was for emergencies, medical bills, retirement. I pointed a finger at the line item for Cabo. I didn't know my profit margin was funding your margaritas, I said. Sloane looked horrifyingly pale. Autumn, I swear, I didn't know. They just gave me cash. They said Dad had a good quarter with his investments. They said... She trailed off. They said you were struggling. They told me they had to lend you money. The room went very quiet. They told you they were lending me money, I asked. Yes, all the time. Sloane's voice rose, desperate to be believed. Mom would say, Oh, poor Autumn. The business is eating all her savings. We had to help her with rent. That is why I never offered to pay for anything when we went out. I thought you were broke. I walked back to the window. The skyline of Chicago looked sharp and cruel against the blue sky. It was a masterclass in manipulation. They had taken my money, given it to Sloane, and then used that very act of theft to paint me as the charity case and her as the success. They had siphoned off my rainy day fund to keep Sloane in eternal sunshine, all while telling me I needed to work harder. My phone buzzed. It was Marilyn. I picked it up. I didn't hesitate this time. I swiped green. Autumn. My mother's voice was unrecognizable. It was high, thin, and vibrating with terror. Is Sloane with you? She is not answering her phone. Please tell me she is not posting anything. She is here, I said. She is reading a spreadsheet. There was a silence on the other end so profound I could hear the static of the line. What spreadsheet? Marilyn whispered. The one showing how you funneled $50,000 of my business revenue into Sloane's lifestyle over the last 3 years, I said. The one showing the emergency fund was actually a Sloane maintenance fund. Autumn, listen, my mother started, her voice speeding up. You don't understand. It is complicated. We were just trying to balance things out. You know how the industry is. Sloane's income is volatile. She needs to maintain an image to get work. You were doing so well. You didn't need it. We were going to pay it back. Pay it back? I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. With what, Dad's retirement? Or with the money you were planning to take from my next quarter? It is not about that right now, she snapped, the fear turning into aggression. We have a bigger problem. The bank called. Because of the video. Because of the publicity. The lender who holds the mortgage on the house saw the news. They are doing a review. They are looking at all the accounts linked to the family name, including the trust. And if they see the transfers, if they see we were moving business assets into personal accounts without declaring it as income, Autumn, they could call the loan. They could audit us. She started to cry. You have to help us. You have to tell them it was authorized. You have to sign a statement saying it was a salary for Sloane. For consulting. Consulting, I repeated. I looked at Sloane, who was sitting on the bed with her head in her hands. Sloane, did you consult on the spicy maple glaze? Sloane didn't look up. She shook her head. Did you consult on the bottle design? Shake. Did you do anything other than call my award stupid and eat calamari while I thanked my team? Sloane made a small, choked sound. Autumn, Please, my mother begged. We are a family. We were just trying to keep everyone afloat. We didn't want Sloane to feel less than. You know how sensitive she is. You are the strong one. You have always been the strong one. I am not strong, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. I am just the one you chose to feed off of. Don't say that. I am saying it. And I am saying this, I will not sign anything. I will not lie to a bank. I will not lie to the IRS. If they audit you, that is your problem. If they call the loan, that is your problem. You would let us lose the house, Marilyn shrieked. Your childhood home. It is not my home, I said. It is the place where I slept while I built a life you didn't care about until you could spend it. I hung up. I turned to Sloane. She was looking at me like I was a stranger. In a way, I was. The doormat she knew had been replaced by a CEO. You knew, I said to her. I didn't, Sloane cried. I swear. Maybe not about the source. I said. But you knew the math didn't add up. You knew you weren't making enough from those affiliate links to pay for a Mercedes. You knew you weren't consulting. You took the money because it was easy, because you thought you deserved it for being you. I just thought they were proud of me, she whispered. I thought they wanted to help. They didn't help you, I said. They crippled you. They made you dependent on a lie, and they used my work to do it. I walked over to the desk and picked up my laptop. I opened my banking portal. I logged into the trust account, the one I had access to, but had never checked because I trusted my father. I froze the account. I revoked my father's signatory rights. I transferred the remaining balance, what little was left, back to the Whitaker and Wild operating account. What are you doing? Sloane asked. I am cutting the cord, I said. No more transfers. No more gifts. If you want money, Sloane, you are going to have to get a job. A real one. Sloane stood up. She looked shaky, but there was a flash of the old defiance in her eyes. I can't get a job. My reputation is ruined. You ruined it. The truth ruined it, I corrected. And frankly, the truth is the only thing that can save you now. If I were you, I would go home, sell the car, sell the designer bags, and pay back every cent you took. Maybe then people will respect you. She stared at me. Then she grabbed her coat. You are cold. Autumn, she spat. You are ice cold. I am just business, I said. She slammed the door when she left. I sat in the silence of the room. My hands were not shaking. I felt a profound sense of grief. But it was a clean grief. It was the grief of amputation, painful, but necessary to stop the rot. I spent the next hour on the phone with my own lawyer, a sharp woman named Elena, who I had hired when the business started growing. I explained the situation. I sent her the spreadsheet Sloane had airdropped to me before she left. This is fraud, Elena said, her voice crisp. Technically, it is embezzlement. Your parents were moving funds from a business trust to personal accounts. If the IRS catches wind of this, it is going to be ugly. I know, I said. I froze the account. I am dissolving the trust. Good. But Autumn, there is something else. What? We just received a notice, Elena said. About an hour ago, while you were dealing with your sister, a formal complaint has been filed with the Consumer Protection Board and the FDA. I felt my stomach drop. A complaint about what? It claims that Whitaker and Wild is misleading customers, Elena said. It claims your clean label is a lie. It alleges that you are using industrial fillers and stealing recipes from a, let me check the name, Legacy Family Cookbook without credit. That is insane, I said. My recipes are mine. I developed them in a lab. I have the notebooks to prove it. Who filed the complaint? It was filed by an LLC, Elena said, called Vaughn Ventures. I frowned. Vaughn, who is Vaughn? Then it clicked. Camille Vaughn. That was the name of the woman Sloane had hired 2 months ago as her brand manager. A woman who had promised to take Sloane's career to the next level. A woman who had been asking Sloane a lot of questions about my business lately. Vaughn Ventures, I repeated. Yes, Elena said. And the registered agent for the LLC. It is a P.O. box in Greenville, but the email address associated with the filing. She paused. Tell me, I said. It is an email address, Elena said slowly. startupqueensloan@gmail.com. I closed my eyes. The proxy LLC tied to Sloane's new manager. But the email, that was Sloane, or someone who had access to Sloane. It wasn't just the parents, I whispered. What was that? Elena asked. Nothing, I said. Just prepare the documentation. Prepare everything. If they want a war, they are going to get one. I looked at the closed door of the hotel room. Sloane had left in a huff, playing the victim. But she or the people she surrounded herself with had planted a bomb before she even walked in. They weren't just trying to take my money. They were trying to take my name. And that was the one thing I would never, ever let them have. If the previous weeks had been a lesson in emotional survival, the next 10 days were a masterclass in corporate warfare. I did not retreat to my apartment to cry. I did not send angry texts. I went to the one place where feelings did not matter, only facts. I went to the Blackwell Brand Foundry. It was a co-working space and business incubator on the edge of the city, a converted textile mill with exposed brick walls and long tables made of reclaimed wood. This was where I had met my lawyer, Elena, and where I had built the operational skeleton of Whitaker and Wild. It was my war room. We gathered in a glass-walled conference room at 7 a.m. Elena was there, along with Leo, my operations manager, and a crisis PR consultant named Marcus. On the table between us sat the formal complaint filed by Vaughn Ventures. It was a nasty piece of fiction. It claimed that my signature formulas were stolen from a proprietary family archive belonging to the Vaughn estate. It claimed that my clean label marketing was fraudulent because I allegedly used industrial thickening agents. It was designed to do one thing: scare off my retailers and destroy my credibility before I could scale up. They are trying to bleed you, Elena said, tapping a pen against the table. They know a lawsuit will take years. They do not want to win in court. They want to win in the court of public opinion. They want Mid-Atlantic Provisions to drop you because you are too high risk. I looked at the document. They say I stole the recipes, that I didn't develop them. Burden of proof is on us to show original creation, Marcus said. He was typing furiously on his laptop. We need to flood the zone. We need to show the work. I have the work, I said. I opened my bag. I pulled out 5 thick, battered, moleskin notebooks. Their covers were stained with oil, soy sauce, and tomato paste. The pages were crinkled from steam. These are my logs, I said, placing them on the table with a heavy thud. Every batch, every failure, every adjustment to the acidity, dates, times, suppliers. I pulled out a stack of invoices. Here are the receipts for the raw ingredients going back 4 years. I can tell you exactly where the chilies came from for batch 304. Leo grinned. Science, he said. We digitize everything, Elena said. We build a timeline that is so dense, so detailed, that their claim looks like a joke. We don't just deny it, we disprove it with physics. For the next week, that is what we did. We created a paper trail of truth. We scanned thousands of pages. We pulled metadata from photos I had taken of test batches in 2019. We built a fortress of evidence, but I knew that defense was not enough. I needed offense. I needed to show the world that Whitaker and Wild was not just a product. It was a place. I had been planning to open a small tasting room in Greenville for months, but I had been hesitating, worried about the overhead. Now, I pushed the button. We called it the Long Table. It was located in the front section of our production facility. We knocked down a wall, exposed the kitchen, and built a 20-foot communal table out of white oak. The concept was simple: a sauce-tasting counter by day and a community kitchen by night. No reservations, no VIP booths, just one long table where everyone sat together. We announced the opening on social media. I expected a few locals to show up. I expected maybe 50 people. On opening night, the line wrapped around the block. I stood behind the counter, wearing my chef's coat, watching them file in. They were not the typical foodies who chase trends. They were normal people, nurses in scrubs, teachers, construction workers, and they didn't just want to buy sauce. They wanted to talk. A woman in her 50s walked up to the register. She was holding a jar of the smoky habanero. She looked at me, her eyes wet. "My mother told me that writing was a waste of time," she said quietly. "She threw away my journals when I was 12. I saw your speech. I saw the video." She put the jar down. "I just wanted to say thank you," she whispered, "for proving that we don't have to listen." I reached across the counter and squeezed her hand. "Enjoy the sauce," I said. Another man, a big guy with calloused hands, told me about how his father laughed when he wanted to study graphic design. A teenager told me her parents refused to come to her robotics competition because it was nerdy. The stupid award had become a rallying cry. My family's cruelty had inadvertently created a community. People were coming to the long table not just to eat, but to be seen, to be validated. I was in the back, refilling the tasting cups, when Leo tapped me on the shoulder. "Autumn," he said, his face tight. "You have a visitor." I wiped my hands on a towel. "Who is it?" "Your mother." I froze. I hadn't spoken to Marilyn since the phone call about the bank. I walked out to the front of the shop. She was standing near the door, clutching her purse. She was wearing sunglasses. Even though it was 7 in the evening, she looked smaller than I remembered. She looked out of place against the industrial brick and the loud, happy chatter of the crowd. I walked over to her. I did not hug her. I stood 2 feet away, my arms crossed. "Hello, Marilyn," I said. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were puffy. She looked around the room, taking in the crowd, the line, the energy. "It is very busy," she said. Her voice was thin. "It is opening night," I said. "I saw the post," she said. "I wanted to, I don't know, I wanted to see it. Graham wouldn't come. He is embarrassed. But she trailed off. She looked at the giant logo painted on the wall. Whitaker and Wild. Grandma Whitaker would have loved this. It was a low blow, invoking my grandmother, the only person who had ever been kind to me in a kitchen. "What do you want, Mom?" I asked. "Can we fix this?" she asked. "Sloan is a mess. The bank is asking for more documents. The neighbors are staring at us when we get the mail. Can't we just put out a statement? Say we are a family?" I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had sat in vino and cedar and ignored my face on the screen. "You can be here," I said. "You can buy a jar of sauce. You can sit at the table. But there will be no photos. There will be no statement. And if you try to use this place to rehabilitate your image, I will ask you to leave." She flinched. "Autumn, I am your mother." "Then act like it," I said. "Sit down and eat, or leave. Those are the options." She stood there for a long moment. Then, she nodded slowly. She walked over to the end of the long table and sat down alone. She ordered a tasting flight. I watched her eat, looking uncomfortable and small, surrounded by the people she would have previously dismissed as nobodies. My father, Graham, took a different approach. He didn't come. He didn't call. He texted. At 9 o'clock that night, my phone buzzed. It was a photo from Graham. It was a picture of a burnt, sad-looking piece of chicken on a paper plate. "Tried to make dinner." The text read, "Mom is out. Not as easy as it looks on TV." Huh. I stared at the screen. This was his version of an apology. He was trying to be relatable. He was trying to show me that he was trying, but it was pathetic. It was the gesture of a man who realized he had lost his retirement fund and his retirement plan me and was now scrambling to find a connection. I typed back, "Turn the heat down next time." I didn't offer to teach him. I didn't offer to come over and cook. I gave him advice, and I left him to eat his burnt chicken alone. Sloane, however, was not capable of shame. She was only capable of pivoting. The next morning, while I was reviewing the sales numbers from the opening we had sold out of 3 SKUs, Leo showed me an Instagram post. "You need to see this," he said. It was Sloane. She had posted a photo of herself and me from 10 years ago. We were teenagers. I looked awkward. She looked perfect. The caption read, "Sisters fight, sisters fall, but sisters rise together." My silence lately has been a time of reflection. I am so proud of Whitaker and Wilde for her success. We are on different paths, but we are looking at the same stars. Sisters healing family. First, I felt a surge of nausea. She was trying to attach herself to my rising star. She was trying to spin the narrative that her silence was reflection and not humiliation. She was trying to rent space in my success because she had been evicted from her own. "Do we reply?" Leo asked. "Do we comment?" "No." I said, "We ignore it. Oxygen is what she wants. We suffocate her with silence." But the silence was about to be broken by a much louder noise. That afternoon, Elena called me. Her voice was serious. "Autumn, we have a problem," she said. "What is it?" "The complaint," she said. "The one from Vaughn Ventures. They escalated it. They sent a copy of the allegations to Mid-Atlantic Provisions and 3 of your other major retailers." My heart stopped. "They can't do that. It is libel." "They can, and they did. Mid-Atlantic just called me. They are putting the new purchase order on hold. They said they can't stock a product that is under investigation for IP theft and safety violations. They need the investigation to be cleared before they resume business." I sat down heavily in my office chair. "That purchase order is for 50,000 units. If we lose that, we can't pay for the new glass. We can't pay the staff." "I know," Elena said. "We need to find out who is behind Vaughn Ventures. We need to prove it is a malicious shell company. If we can prove it is a targeted attack with no merit, we can get the retailers back on board." "Sloane," I said. "It has to be Sloane." "We are looking into it," Elena said. "We traced the digital footprint of the LLC filing. It was done online. And we found the IP address used to create the account," Elena said. "And we found the recovery email address." "Was it Sloane?" I asked. "The email address," Elena said slowly, "is longfamilyestate@gmail.com. I frowned. "I don't know that email." "We ran a recovery check," Elena said. "The phone number attached to that email ends in 4492. The room spun. 4492. That wasn't Sloane's number. Sloane's number ended in 7700. 4492 was the landline. It was the landline at my parents' house, the phone that sat on the hallway table under the mirror where Sloane used to check her makeup. It wasn't Sloane," I whispered. "Well, it might have been her using their computer," Elena said. "But the billing address for the LLC registration fee, it matches the house, and the credit card used—" She paused. "It was your father's card," Elena said. "Graham Long." I dropped the phone. I sat there, staring at the wall. I had thought Sloane was the villain. I had thought she was the jealous sister trying to tear me down. And I had thought my parents were just enablers, weak people who couldn't say no to their golden child. But this was different. My father had paid for the LLC that was suing me. My father had used his credit card to fund the destruction of my business. Why? Because I cut the money off. I had frozen the trust. I had stopped the flow of cash. And instead of apologizing, instead of reflecting, they had decided to destroy the source of the income if they couldn't control it, if they couldn't milk the cow. They were going to slaughter it. It wasn't just sabotage. It was an extortion racket, and the people running it were the people who had given me life. I stood up. I walked out of my office. "Leo," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "Yeah, boss." "Get the car," I said. "We are going to the house, the warehouse." "No," I said. "My parents' house." I picked up the stack of notebooks. I picked up the invoices. I am done with lawyers, I said. I am going to finish this myself. The official media launch of the long table was designed to be a celebration, but the atmosphere in the room felt more like a courtroom awaiting a verdict. The space was beautiful, filled with the scent of roasted garlic and simmering tomatoes, but the tension was thick enough to choke on. Reporters from the local news affiliates were setting up cameras in the corner. Food bloggers, the ones who had not yet abandoned me based on the rumors, were huddled in small groups, whispering. I stood behind the white oak counter, smoothing the front of my chef's coat. I checked my reflection in the stainless steel prep table. I looked calm. Inside, I was calculating the probability of disaster. My lawyer, Elena, stood off to the side, checking her watch. We knew the complaint from Vaughn Ventures had been escalated. We knew they were trying to time a health inspection or a legal injunction to coincide with the broadcast. It was a classic sabotage tactic, hit the victim when the lights are brightest. The broadcast was scheduled to start at 7 o'clock. At 6:45, the double doors at the front of the space swung open. It was not a guest. It was a man in a gray suit, holding a tablet and a badge. He was followed by 2 uniformed officers. The room went silent. The murmur of conversation died instantly. The camera crews, sensing blood, swiveled their lenses toward the door. "Autumn Long," the man called out. His voice was loud, authoritative. "I am Senior Inspector Davis with the State Department of Health and Safety. We received an emergency filing regarding immediate public health hazards at this facility. I need to conduct a spot inspection, now." I saw the reporters exchange looks. This was it, the kill shot. If I refused, I looked guilty. If I let him in and he found a single smudge, I was ruined. I did not flinch. I did not look at Elena. I walked out from behind the counter and met him in the center of the room. "Welcome, Inspector," I said. My voice was steady, amplified by the acoustics of the high ceilings. "We are just about to go live, but please, come in." I turned to the camera crews. "Turn the lights up," I said to them. "Film this." The inspector blinked. Surprised. He had expected resistance. He had expected panic. "I have the documentation you are looking for," I said. I signaled to Leo, who brought over a heavy bound binder. "Here are the temperature logs for every batch processed in the last 6 months. Here are the supplier certificates of origin for every ingredient. And here," I pointed to the open kitchen, "is the facility. It is open concept. We have nothing to hide." I walked him through the station. I showed him the sanitation logs. I showed him the pH testing strips. I explained the chemistry of the preservation process with the precision of a professor. I did not just answer his questions. I overwhelmed him with competence. The cameras rolled the entire time. The audience, both in the room and watching the live stream, saw a woman who knew her craft down to the molecular level. After 20 minutes, the inspector closed his tablet. He looked at the binder. He looked at the pristine surfaces. He looked at me. "Everything appears to be in order, Ms. Long," he said, his voice less booming now. "In fact, this is one of the most compliant facilities I have seen. The complaint mentioned unsafe additives. I see no evidence of that." "Thank you, Inspector," I said. "Please, feel free to grab a tasting cup on your way out." He left. The door closed behind him. The room erupted. It was not polite applause. It was a roar. The sabotage had not just failed. It had vindicated me. I had turned an execution into a coronation. The host of the local news segment, a woman named Sarah, who had been sympathetic to my story, stepped forward. "We are live in 30 seconds, she said. I returned to the counter. The red light on the camera blinked on. "We are here at the long table," Sarah said into her microphone, "where owner Autumn Long has just passed a surprise inspection with flying colors. Autumn, there has been a lot of noise around your brand lately, not just about the sauce, but about the video that went viral last month, the dinner." The room went quiet again. This was the question everyone wanted to ask. "Yes," I said. "The dinner." People are calling it the stupid award moment, Sarah said. It has sparked a massive conversation about family support. How do you feel about that video now? I looked into the lens. I thought about my mother sitting alone at the end of the table a few nights ago. I thought about my father's burnt chicken photo. I thought about the spreadsheet. I could have destroyed them. I could have unleashed the full fury of the internet on them. I could have told the world about the embezzlement, the theft, the lies, but I realized that destruction was their game, not mine. I was a creator. I began slowly, that video resonated with people because everyone knows what it feels like to be edited out of their own life. We all have people who want us to stay small so they can feel big. When you break that contract, when you decide to exist without permission, it scares them. That dinner was not just a meal. It was the moment I stopped waiting for them to look up. And the lawsuits, Sarah asked. The accusations that you didn't build this yourself. I took a deep breath. This was the final boundary. I have evidence, I said, my voice clear, that the recent complaints filed against this company were submitted by an LLC funded through a bank account controlled by my parents. Graham and Marilyn Long. A gasp went through the room. Sarah's eyes widened. I am releasing this information not to attack them, I continued, but to end it. I am releasing the documentation to the public record tonight, not for revenge, but because the truth is the only thing that stops the cycle. I built this company. I developed these recipes, and I will not let anyone, related to me or not, claim otherwise. I looked directly at the camera. You cannot buy a legacy with someone else's work, I said, and you cannot steal a reputation that you did not earn. The segment ended. The lights dimmed. I stood there, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders that I had been carrying since I was a child. It was done. The secret was out. The weapon they had used against me, silence, was broken. In the living room of a house in the suburbs of Greenville, I knew two people were sitting in front of a television, stunned into absolute stillness. They were finally seeing the reality they had tried to finance their way out of. They were seeing that their money, their control, and their narratives were powerless against the truth. But the night was not over. There was a commotion at the front door. I looked up. Sloane was pushing her way through the crowd. She was wearing a white dress. It was modest, simple, the kind of dress a defendant wears to court to look innocent. Her hair was down. She looked frantic, her eyes darting around the room until they locked on me. She started crying before she even reached me. "Autumn," she sobbed, throwing her hands out. "Autumn, please, I didn't know about the LLC. You have to tell them I didn't know. They are destroying me online. They are saying I am a fraud." The cameras, which had started to pack up, turned back on. Sloane saw the red lights. She adjusted her posture instantly. She turned her tear-stained face toward the lens. "I am just a sister," she wailed, her voice pitching up for maximum sympathy. "I just wanted us to be a family again. Autumn, why are you doing this to us?" She reached for me. She tried to hug me. She wanted the photo op. She wanted the image of the forgiving sister embracing the prodigal sibling. She wanted to use my stage to launch her redemption arc. I stepped back. The crowd watched, breathless. "Outside," I said. "What?" Sloane blinked, her performance faltering. "We are doing this outside," I said. "Away from the cameras." "No," she said, her eyes hardening. "We do it here. We are family. Family fixes things together." "Family doesn't sue family," I said. I grabbed her arm, not gently, but firmly. I steered her through the crowd, past the reporters, past the customers who were looking at her with a mixture of pity and disgust. I pushed open the side door that led to the alleyway behind the kitchen. The cold night air hit us. The door clicked shut, cutting off the noise of the party. It was just us. Two sisters standing in the glow of a security light, surrounded by dumpsters and the hum of the HVAC unit. Sloane ripped her arm away. "You ruined my life," she screamed, the mask falling completely. "Do you know what you just did? You named Mom and Dad on live TV. They are going to be pariahs. And what about me? I have lost every sponsor. I have lost my apartment. I have nothing. You have what you earned, I said. Which is nothing. How can you be so cruel? She hissed. You have everything now. You have the award. You have the money. You have the fame. Why can't you just share it? Why can't you just say we helped you? It wouldn't cost you anything. It would cost me the truth, I said. The truth. Sloane laughed. It was a bitter, ugly sound. The truth is that you were always the boring one, the quiet one. You were the background character. Autumn, you were supposed to stay in the back. I know, I said. That was the script, but I rewrote it. I looked at her. I looked at the sister I had spent 30 years trying to impress. I saw the fear in her eyes, the desperate, clawing need to be relevant. I realized she wasn't a monster. She was just a parasite who had run out of hosts. Go home, Sloane, I said. I can't go home, she cried. Mom and Dad are furious. They are blaming me for the LLC getting traced. They won't answer my calls. Then figure it out, I said. Like I did. I turned to go back inside. Wait, she shouted. You can't just leave me here. I am your sister. You owe me. I stopped. I turned back one last time. I don't owe you anything, I said. I paid my dues. I paid them in missed dinners. I paid them in silence. I paid them in the $50,000 you stole from my company. I stepped closer to her. You don't get to insult my life and then rent space inside it, I said. Sloane stood there, mouth open, the words dying in her throat. I turned around and opened the heavy metal door. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses spilled out from the long table. It sounded warm. It sounded real. I walked inside and let the door close, leaving Sloane in the alley, alone with the silence she had always tried to fill with noise. I walked back to the counter. Leo handed me a glass of wine. Elena gave me a nod. The inspector was gone. The cameras were packing up. The customers were eating, talking, sharing their stories. I looked around the room. I wasn't the quiet one anymore. I wasn't the supporting character. I took a sip of the wine. It tasted like victory. The award on the shelf behind me caught the light. It wasn't stupid. It was a mirror. It had forced my family to look at themselves. And for the first time, they couldn't look away. I went back to work. There were sauces to taste, and for the first time in my life, the only approval that mattered was my own. Thank you so much for listening to Autumn's story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. So please leave a comment down below and share your thoughts on how she handled her family. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Helena Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more people. Your support means the world to me.